Hello and welcome back. Well, today I have a guest for you who is living proof that not having access to information, support, or infrastructure for your career path doesn't have to be a dead end to your career aspirations. And I wanted you to hear her story because you're probably wondering, is it even possible to build the career that I want from where I'm starting right now? Well, today's guest, Lily Rusbeen, Asongfac's starting point might be different from yours as a mom navigating a STEM career, but her guiding principles will still be valuable to you. Lily is a Cameroonian space educator where she's helping more people see how space connects to everyday life and how many different careers can actually fit inside the space ecosystem. And in our conversation, we talk about building a space career in a country where this field of work is practically non-existent and the practical steps that she took in order to open doors for herself. Now, what makes Lily uniquely valuable to you as an ambitious woman in STEM is that she doesn't just inspire you. She gives you a repeatable plan that you can use to gain access and visibility for moments when you feel boxed out and you don't feel like you have the extra time or extra money or extra space to really move forward. In this conversation, we cover how Lily became a space professional from a country without space capabilities, breaking barriers and building from zero. Why space is an ecosystem. It's not just a collection of rocket scientists, and how that unlocks more career opportunities for women in STEM, and may even be a career path that you had never considered before. How you can build more opportunity for yourself through mentorship and outreach and building a community that's going to support you. And why tracking and sharing your milestones can actually create more career momentum for you. I hope this episode is going to meet you right where you're at, and that you might even have your daughters or students listen in because, a word of caution, this episode will reinvigorate those dreams and passions from when you were younger and imagining what you would be when you grew up. Welcome to Science Careers for Moms, the podcast for women in STEM who want to have both a meaningful career and be there for the important things in life. Hi, I'm Anuki Kapasi, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. I'm passionate about helping moms in science and tech build careers that fit their whole life. Join me for honest conversations with other scientists who've gone through the same career decisions you're facing right now. You'll also get actionable frameworks that cut through burnout, work-life balance myths, and circular decision-making. If you're ready to make STEM career decisions that let you be an amazing mom, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode. If you've ever felt like you're starting from zero for building the career that you actually want, then stick around because Lily's story is going to challenge all of that. And when you're ready to build a science career that fits your real life, then make sure to sign up for the Better Baseline, my newsletter. It's free and the link is in the show notes. I am really excited about today's conversation because I feel lucky to be able to introduce my special guest today, Lily Rusbeen Asongfac, a Cameroonian space educator and a leader in international partnerships. She's helping to expand what's possible in space and STEM by turning, quote unquote, no access into real pathways through community building, collaboration, and hands-on education. Lily is an international account manager at Spaceverse, where she builds partnerships across the globe, and she's also the founder of the Aerospace Baby Project, bringing space education to children through engaging, story-driven learning experiences. She's a national point of contact for SGAC Cameroon and the founder of Youths for Sustainable Space Development, Y4SSD, creating opportunities for young people to step into the future of space science, especially across emerging space ecosystems. Her work has been recognized internationally, including honors such as African Space Leader Award, the Nebula Award, and she's obtained the recognition as a Tech Woman Fellow by the U.S. Department of State. At the heart of Lily's message is this: success isn't about where you start, It's about the communities you empower and the futures you unlock. So, Lily, welcome to Science Careers for Moms. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, I mean, just wow. I was reading that and I read it a couple times as well before, and impressed every time that I go through your whole work history here. And I think I even left out, but you took the stage at a TEDx event, right?
Yes, I did exactly 1 year ago. Yes.
Wow, wow. I mean, that's also amazing. So I'm going to have to ask you about that experience as well. But, let's just start here. For the listeners who are meeting you for the first time, what do you do exactly in the space industry? You can start with what you do now, or you can give a little more context to that bio I read. And specifically, help us understand what problem you're really committed to solving right now.
Thank you for the question. To answer the very first one, what I really do in the space industry, I do wear a few hats, which I will briefly go through, but at the very core of it all, my reason for existing in the industry is pretty much to get more people, especially the non-technical population, to know about the opportunities that exist in the space industry and also why space is important. I am the international account manager for Spaceverse, which is a space startup. And what we're trying to do at Spaceverse is to teach the public about what goes on within the space industry. And we're getting the experts themselves to share their stories, how they got into space, what they love so much about space, and also how anyone else can get into space. My experience so far for the past 5+ years now in the space industry is that space is diverse. Most times when we talk space, people think astronauts only, and maybe Neil Armstrong, and recently the Artemis mission, which we are all so excited about. And we had the first ever woman to, go to the moon or orbit the moon. And it's been a very difficult, I would say, journey because most times when I try to tell people about the space industry, they're like, oh, especially from a country like mine, Cameroon, and maybe most of the African continent as a whole, other countries on the continent. Most times when we tell people about space, if they're not already working in space or they're not STEM inclined,
Mm.
the first question is, what's my business with space? Like, what do I, as a normal person, or maybe a local farmer or a banker, how does space affect my life? We're talking space, or you're telling me about space, but we have some challenges back here. Maybe there's no
Mhm.
electricity, we've got bad roads, no access to clean water in some areas, but you're talking space. That sounds like a Western problem. But, at the very core, the moment we wake up in the morning, for example, there are people who are checking weather forecasts. Others are trying to get somewhere. They're looking on Google Maps
Mm.
or one of the navigation apps to get to where they're going. And all of that, whether you're checking the weather or making a phone call to your child abroad or even just figuring out the fastest way to get to where you're going and whether there's going to be traffic, that is using space. So
Mhm.
from my international account manager role right down to teaching children about space in primary schools, classrooms, through the Aerospace Baby Project, I'm trying to tell people, regardless of their ages, so be it partners, in my role, in my corporate job, or children in classrooms, that space is important and space is here to make life better for all of us. And space has already been doing that, whether we know it or not. So
Mm.
it's a very diverse industry. You do not necessarily need to have a STEM background to work in space. There are space lawyers. This is something I only got to know actually working in the industry myself, seeing how diverse it is, and anybody literally can have a space in space. So there are space lawyers, for example, like I was mentioning, people with an accounting background, auditors, and all of that have roles that they play in the space industry. There is a new space economy, which is becoming a very interesting new pivot for the industry as a whole, where it's pretty much trying to get countries which would normally not have access to space to be able to get access, because now things are through nano satellites, for example, you can get a satellite in space. You don't have to spend so much money as they would spend in the past with traditional satellites. So that's just, a resume of the different things that I do, but it all comes to one big message: access to space for all.
I just love everything you said there. I too, even though I have a STEM background, I thought being in the space side of things that it was exclusively science and that you literally had to be a rocket scientist, to work in there, in this whole field of work. Obviously, there is that segment of people that work in this field, but then there's this whole other ecosystem. And I was wondering why you use that word ecosystem to describe it, but now I understand what you're talking about. All the different talent and roles that, support and sustain, not just the technical part, but literally to have it not run as a business, but as this big international project, right? Right now, just from your specific country, are you also sharing resources such as talent? And is your goal to now find more talent? And I'm not just talking about space scientists, but all the supporting roles that you just talked about. Is it your goal to try to shore up those skills within your country?
So I would say yes, but not in its entirety, because most times when we talk about space and then people in turn hear about it and go, oh, I'm a lawyer, I have a degree in law, I've been doing business law, it means I could possibly get an opportunity in space. Or you could have someone who used to love the idea of moonwalks when they were a kid, or have imagined doing all this amazing stuff in space. They've drawn stuff when they were younger. But then that curiosity, because of where they found themselves, had just shut down. And later on, maybe they're working as an accountant in some accounting firm, and they hear about space again, and they're like, oh, means I can actually divert and get into this industry because I already love it. So we're not trying to sell space as it's fancy, come work here, but it's the tagline would be something like, if you had a passion for space, if you had questions about space when you're younger, and because of where you found yourself, you did not end up pursuing that, now you can, get back regardless of what you're doing. You could be a medical doctor and you could now come do space medicine, because there's so much going on. People are doing stem cell research on the ISS, that's the International Space Station. We're looking for the next cure of cancer. We're trying to see if space and the space station as a laboratory could help us understand things about the human body more. So that's like space medicine, very cool stuff. There's astrobiology. Maybe there's some lady somewhere or some guy somewhere who is now working in an agricultural firm. They're doing veterinary medicine or agricultural, and now we're telling them about astrobiology, which is a field in space where people who are passionate about culture and sustaining and nutrition for years to come, including if we're eventually talking about colonizing other planets like Mars. I'm sure you've heard about that. But if we're talking about going to the moon and Mars, then we have to have in mind what these astronauts would be feeding on. So that's where astrobiology comes in. They're doing all that research, making sure, seeing what can grow where and what cannot grow where, and things around that.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you for clarifying that. This was actually going to be a question I was going to ask you about how you enter working within the space industry, I guess I'll call it for now. I wasn't sure if you kind of have to start by centering yourself on space work and then seeing what is needed and then build the skills for that. But it sounds like from what you're saying is that you take there's existing talent and people who have had some sort of passion for space at some point in their life, they can reinvigorate that by redirecting their work towards fueling this, space work. So that's really cool. Just talking about it as a possible career shift, which is a big part of what I talk about on the show. And so I love that you're opening up people's minds to the possibility that whatever skills they have right now could potentially help and further, this really important work in the space field. And also that opening up our minds to the fact that it is so multidisciplinary, that there are all these different roles, like you said, these diverse roles that build the ecosystem. But also, as a single person, you have a multidisciplinary role, that you could be trained in one expertise, have passions in other areas, and bring them together and offer that multidisciplinary approach to, furthering space work. So, you certainly have been opening up my mind already. I'm very curious because you talk about becoming a space professional and, for example, potentially shifting your current work to applying it to the space field. You come from a country that doesn't have its own dedicated space capabilities. So, for you, what was your journey and what were the major turning points that made your current career possible?
I love that question because every time I have to talk about my journey, it gets me really excited. So I'll start with how I got to know about space, to begin with. When I was in primary school, so that would be elementary school in the US, but other parts of the world, primary school. One day, my class teacher came to class and told us about Neil Armstrong being the very first man to walk on the moon. And I was amazed. I'm like, what? What do you mean a man has been to the moon? How did that happen? Is the moon a location? Is it a destination? Do you get on a plane to go to the moon? I was young, I was curious, I asked questions. But being where I was, there were no libraries, no access to mobile phones with internet like we have today. So a lot of people didn't know, and they just gave me answers to shut me up. Like, okay, probably he just got there. However, who cares? But I wasn't satisfied with that. I needed to know how, people get to the moon. I was good with mathematics. Later on, I went to high school, did science, majored in science. And when I got into university during the very first year, I had a laptop and I had a mobile phone and I had access to the internet, and I was in a uni that had a library. And all of that access, one day while I was doing a homework from school, from a lecture, I remembered that I had questions about space, and now I have tools that could possibly give me answers. So I used Google. Google is your friend. And I literally typed in the words, how did Neil Armstrong get to the moon? And that was it. That's how I got to learn about space. I started reading about rockets, reading about the whole career of an astronaut. There are people called astronauts, and this is how they live on the ISS. Sometimes they're going to, the moon, other times they're going to the laboratory and stuff like that. So I was already studying for a degree in telecommunications engineering. And what I decided to do was I was going to check how space blends with telecoms engineering. Then I got to learn about satellites. And then I was like, okay, satellites, I think this is what I want to do. I want to work on satellites. I want to build satellites. Fast forward, I took online courses, reached out to people on social media, LinkedIn mostly, and people who were already working in space. And it was a brief introduction. Hi, I'm Lily from Cameroon. I love space. I'm curious. I'd love to know how the industry works. Would you mentor me? Sometimes I was like, would you teach me? Would you mentor me? And I remember reaching out to one doctor at one point. He was a professor at a university in South Africa, and I told him about myself. Good thing he was also Cameroonian, but he was working as a professor in South Africa, in a department where they worked with space and satellites. So when I told him about myself, my passion, he was like, you know what? I'm going to help you. Let's do this. Link me up with someone from your department. I'll co-supervise you on the space project. And that's
Wow.
that's what my final year thesis was. I worked on a project with a South African satellite for the Gabonese Space Agency. Cameroon doesn't have anything going on as far as the space industry is concerned, like you highlighted. But there are a few literally about five people who work in space, and I am lucky to be among them now. But at that time, there were very few, so I could reach out to each and every one of them, and I
Mhm.
told them about myself. And I'm really glad because they were very helpful. So I'm going to say people, a community, reaching out, not being afraid, asking people to mentor you or to teach you something is the way I went about it. I wasn't scared. I was like, what's the worst that could happen? They'll say no or not reply, but
Mhm.
I'll try anyway. So
Mhm.
yes, that's how I got into the space industry from a country without space capabilities.
Real quick, before we keep going, I want to pause on something that Lily is showing us so clearly here. Access is not always handed to you. Sometimes you have to build it one small move at a time through learning and reaching out and tracking your wins and refusing to disqualify yourself before you even try. That is exactly the kind of micro change that we talk about inside the Better Baseline, my weekly newsletter for moms in STEM who want a career that fits motherhood without burning everything down to get there. So make sure to click on the link in the show notes. I love that story because it reminds me a lot of my story now. I had a couple of career shifts, I would say, but mine were not very drastic. Like, I am a biomedical researcher trained in the laboratory. Towards the end of my PhD, I realized that I didn't want to go into academia. Like, I didn't want to follow the professor track of getting tenure and working with a university and conducting research that way. But I also got interested in epidemiology. And I thought, oh, how cool. Instead of me looking subcellular, I could look at population level. And I thought, there is no way I'm going to go back to school and get a whole other degree and all this stuff. But the skill set was different, right? Doing laboratory work versus statistical, analyses. And so I thought, how am I going to be able to make the shift? And I literally did exactly what you did, not different country, but I'm just sharing this story to reiterate the power of reaching out, finding the mentors, that how people can make a huge difference in your career, and how people, when you're honest with them, really do want to help you. And so I did the same thing. I went out to this department in the university that was under construction at the time. And so all the professors and researchers were in a trailer park, basically. And I knocked on the door one by one and said, hey, I'm willing to help you on my free time to help your research, if you can mentor me and train me on what it is that you do. And eventually I found a professor who was really excited to work with me as well, because he was looking for somebody who had a molecular biology background. So it turned out to be very mutually beneficial. But your story reminds me of what I did and how I actually entered a whole different line of work than I thought I was going to do when I was going through grad school. So I totally believe you when you say that finding a mentor or somebody who's willing to teach you and leaning into people virtually or in front of you. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And I just want to switch gears a little bit because you have given us a really good idea of who all might be involved in space work and what it took for you to get there, the technical side, as well as all of the other things that you did, like networking and having this curiosity and just, pulling on that thread until it led you somewhere big. And what is it that you do sort of on a day to day or week to week basis? Can you kind of summarize what your major responsibilities are so people understand a little more, specifically in your role? I know is more technical maybe, but you also have those broader interests in terms of education and things. So all of these roles that you take on, can you explain to us what you do?
Yes, sure. In my current role at Spaceverse, what I do is I manage relationships from scouting, in quotes, partners, reaching out to them, telling them about the project that we're working on at Spaceverse, and inviting them to come on board. The entire process, signing an MOU and everything, getting on meetings to close that deal. is pretty much what I do every day. So I'm sending tons of emails, just doing back and forth with our partners and the industry experts that we have on the Spaceverse Friends for Space series, which is a series where, like I earlier mentioned, we're getting space industry experts to share the work that they do in space through a video interview. And there are just several different ways in which we get them to contribute to share and inspire the public about space. So yeah, that's what my role looks like in a nutshell. I manage partnerships. I create and manage partnerships for the company, and also doing communications with internal team members.
Mhm.
We have a group of editors. We have a social media team that manages publications for the interviews that we're doing with the experts, and yes, so that's it on the space website. As a space educator with the Aerospace Baby Project, I don't do this every day,
Mhm.
but it happens like once in 2 months. I go to schools, I go to a primary school next to me. If they have an event coming up, maybe it's International Day of the Girl Child, or it's International Science Day or something, one of those important days. I would reach out to them and tell them I need an hour or two to talk to the kids about space and STEM, and encourage them to love mathematics and tell them math is not difficult and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what the space educator hat that I wear does.
Mhm. That is so important, though, because it makes it so much more real. I feel like space in general, we're so far removed. And what you're doing is you're describing how everyday things that we use are because of the things that we learn about or set up in space. So it makes it real for them. But as well, a lot of what I knew was just through, movies or through maybe textbooks, but it wasn't ever right there in front of me to see somebody who actually trained in, works in, contributes to, and is right there and you can ask questions to, and that, hey, if she did it, I can do it too. That inspiration becomes so much more effective, I think, and
Mm.
really, really important for people who don't really have a good picture of what this is. It feels like this like magical thing that happens, especially with
Yes.
Hollywood movies and stuff.
Yes, Hollywood doing the absolute best. Um, but that's exactly why I started doing this outreach to kids, because if you remember, my journey started when I was in school, right? And when I had those questions about Neil Armstrong, there was nobody to answer those questions. There was no one to teach me
Mhm.
what space really is. And I
Mhm.
feel like maybe things would have happened faster, sooner for me. And so what I'm trying to do is to give back in a way that if there's a kid somewhere, because they've had interaction with me, they would want to pursue their space dreams. And I'm very proud because two of my mentees are actually now studying abroad. Well, one graduated last month. They got scholarships to travel abroad and study for a master's in one in space cybersecurity and another in space science. So it's very rewarding. So I actually tell people that's my hobby. That's what I do in my free time. I go to talk about space because it gives me so much joy.
You should be really proud of that. So congratulations, because you've just changed the lives of these people, these students. But that's exactly why I think that many of us start businesses. It's often to fill this problem that we encountered and there wasn't a satisfactory solution to it. So then we go on and build businesses where we can say, hey, we don't want people to struggle the way we did. Here's maybe the shortcut, or here's a solution if you come across this problem. So honestly, in that sense, you are an entrepreneur. Maybe you're not doing it for a profit mission. You're not, you're more purpose driven rather than trying to maybe make money off of the space education part of things. But, the fact is that you're still an entrepreneur. You set up a business or set up a company to be able to have a structure in meeting and mentoring kids. And that is a direct result of you not having that when you were younger. So I'm not surprised. You seem like a very industrious person. So, of course, you have this, and your hobby is very much, I wouldn't even refer to it as a hobby because it's just, like I said, you're doing something that's very life changing for people. So you have the technical background, but you mentioned other skills, and I think that many of us in STEM encounter this, that you have to utilize soft skills and other non-technical skills, like communications or being able to collaborate and bring different stakeholders together, managing projects, all of these types of things, coordination that we don't necessarily get trained in when we're going through our technical training, right? I'm sure early on you leaned very heavily on your math and engineering skill set. And then eventually, as you fell into these other roles, you had to broaden. And so, I guess for now, what skills and tools do you use the most? I think you mentioned you're emailing a lot and things like that. And how do we acquire some of those more human skills, I guess I would call it, when our training programs don't focus on that?
So that's an interesting question because I've always thought of myself to be a people's person, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand that in STEM it's not always the case because most times STEM professionals are behind their PCs or in a laboratory or with a marker and a board solving maths. But I actually enjoy interacting with people, so it sort of came natural and I just found myself doing it. And I also like learning stuff and explaining it. That's how it sticks for me. So it made it even again easier for me to just learn about space, for example, and then teach these children because while teaching them, they ask me questions, they test my knowledge of space, and it
Mm-hmm.
also sticks. And we're all learning together. So it's a win-win. They're learning from me, I'm learning from them, and they're sparking and making my brain sharper. But I think that for someone who maybe doesn't have skills like communication, maybe they're not a people's person, they're always indoors, they don't know how to network. I would say start simple. It could be from within your friend group, try maybe talking more when you go out for dinner or something. Don't just listen, but try to speak up, try to, I think little things like that would even build
Mm-hmm.
up to eventually becoming a public speaker. Try to take initiative. If your friend group or your mom group is trying to have some getaway thing to help you just relax, you could decide to plan that. And one thing I know is moms are already very talented people when it comes to managing stuff. They always have a solution for stuff, one way
Yeah.
or the other. So those skills right there could be translated into the industry because with that problem-solving mindset that we have as women, I'm just going to say it
Yeah.
because I've always said that women are very good at being excellent managers because we
Mm-hmm.
can do so many things at the same time and we do not stop until we've solved a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that drive could translate to employable skills and
Mm-hmm.
it could even develop into something more. You could start a business or teach these
Mm-hmm.
skills to other
Mm-hmm.
people. So yeah, I'll take there are TED Talks as well. I remember I remember when I had to defend my final year thesis in undergrad. I actually watched a lot of TED Talks on public speaking. There were all these tips on look at one person in the crowd and focus on that person only, and all these
Mm-hmm.
other tips and tricks that we hear around. So listen to people, follow people that inspire you or someone who is doing what you'd love to do and just watch how they do it. And I would not say try to copy it, like not be your authentic self, no, but try to blend that with who you already are and make it even better.
Mm-hmm.
And for the tools that I use currently, it's
Mm-hmm.
just the regular workspace, G Suite and Zoho.
Mm-hmm.
So tools to track projects. We're sending out emails. I also use AI. AI helps me to put my thoughts together in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
To craft the emails and yeah, just things around that. So yes, that is.
That's awesome. So, what I'm hearing from you is that we often have a lot of these skills already that we're doing out of necessity, and just recognizing that we have those skills, we just reapply it in a different setting, or some skills come more natural to us, we can lean into those. And then also where we might need a little help with, we can get that help from other people or tools and things. So, sounds really great. I'm just curious, as a woman who has been working in this very technical heavy field, have you ever come across any bumps in the road where maybe you weren't taken as seriously, or had to just kind of go extra to prove that you were the woman for the job? If you had any example, I was just wondering what that was and maybe what you did to overcome it.
I think I've so far been very lucky with the industry and in the industry because my my boss is a
Hmm.
woman and she is super supportive. You know, everything that I know about business and managing people, I learned from her. And she always tells me I can do anything. So she's like
Yeah.
my boss and like a mom at the same time, because she always makes sure that even if we fail at something together, or
Hmm.
if I fail at something, it's a failure for both of us. So we work through it. But I would say before getting into, my job,
Hmm.
I probably faced that or definitely faced challenges like that when I was in school, in
Hmm.
university. I was in a class where it was 25% female. The majority was male, and most times we would hear guys say things like probably they were just trying to do some gender balance to get girls into the faculty, and there were times when they expected us to look more masculine, right? So you
Hmm.
cannot be girly in an engineering
Mm.
class. You cannot wear a dress. Or they'll ask if you're going to a fashion show. So they'll expect us to always wear t-shirt and jeans and stuff. So I think, and they'll play about it and we'll just laugh. But now that I'm older, I see how
Hmm.
offensive that
Hmm.
was. But yeah, I think we just laughed through it and it did not really affect me much because I also come from a family where I'm the firstborn and all of my siblings are boys except one. So I have so many brothers. So I'm
Hmm.
used to, I would say I'm used to guys teasing me like that. But again, now that I think of it in hindsight, I see how offensive that could have been, guys in class asking us to not wear dresses or to wear t-shirts
Hmm.
and jeans. But yeah, so that would be the only sort of bias that I would say I've faced,
Hmm.
but not on the side of being questioned if I'm the person for the job.
Hmm.
Not yet, and I hope never.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. First of all, I think your mindset and your attitude have been really strong. You seem very determined. Also, I had a really similar situation where I just was really lucky. Man or woman, all the mentors I've had have been so amazing, gone above and beyond. And so I had not necessarily bumped into challenges that way, in terms of being a woman. I also think that maybe I had this wisdom that I didn't even realize at the time, which is to surround myself by supportive people. And so that's really great. And just, Lily, I hope that in general times are changing and that this is not going to be as much of an issue. Some people
Yeah,
are struggling for sure, but I think overall, I think times are changing. So,
true,
um,
true.
yeah, but thank you for sharing your
Oh,
perspective.
sorry to cut you. Now that I think of it, I haven't faced challenges yet as a woman, like I said, but the most challenge I've faced in the industry, especially, is not coming from a space-faring nation. So it's the fact that I'm from Cameroon, and maybe if I want to get an audience or get a job, because there's a very gray area, right, between
Mhm.
space and defense for most
Mm.
countries.
Mhm.
So it means that if you're going to work in space in a certain country, you need to
Mhm.
be from that country. So I think that's
Mhm.
that's going to be like
Mhm.
the most challenge I'll face. But being a woman, I haven't had that issue. yet.
That's great.
I
That's
keep
great.
saying yet.
Yeah, but I can see what you're saying. I can see why that might be the case
Mhm.
about certain countries being more established and therefore they're bigger players in the conversation. You might have actually already answered this, but I think it's really important because it is, I think, has been the key to your successes. The fact of the matter is that you were able to build from little to nothing, right? No special guidance initially. You found that for yourself. You found the way to get educated and entered into this field yourself. So you're basically building from zero. At the time, you didn't really have access to the resources, connections, institutional support, even. So, what were some of the maybe your top or maybe top three things that led to your current success? You mentioned networking and outreach, but what would you say was important to your being where you are now?
I think the top on that list is going to be my willingness to take no for an answer. I always looked at no as the worst that could happen. It's not going to take my life. I'm still going to be here and I can ask again. So, be it applying for a job or a scholarship to study abroad or a scholarship to attend an international space conference in another country, I would always apply for anything that I see that looks interesting to me. I will not be afraid because most times before before applying, there's this tendency to just roll yourself out. You're like, you know what, you don't have a shot. But I'm like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? They'll tell me no. And then what? I'll still be here and I can apply again next time. So
Mhm.
I was always willing to try, and failure was not the end. It could be redirection. I looked at it as redirection sometimes. I looked at it as try again. So yeah, and I still carry that mindset now. Always trying, just try, just apply, just give it a shot. You know, if you go somewhere, go somewhere. If not, then fine. I would say sharing my milestones as well. So every little win that I got, I tried to share, to maybe
Mhm.
write a post on LinkedIn about it, maybe tell people on my WhatsApp story about it. When I tell people or when I write about it, it's not seeking approval, but that congratulations sort of echoes in my mind, even down the line in future when I'm applying for another thing. Because I'm like, people see the good things, right? I would write about when I've gotten the scholarship or I've gotten the job, but then it's the chairs that I got during the previous one that keeps me going. And
Mhm.
it doesn't mean if I didn't get chairs, I wouldn't apply again. But I just share those milestones because I'm like, there's probably somebody who would see it and be inspired, or there's somebody who would see it and would remember me tomorrow for a similar opportunity.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'll just put it out there and I could come back to it tomorrow and read again and say, oh, I did that. You know, during maybe a period where I'm feeling down, I'm like, you got that, you were selected top three out of 3,000 applicants. Look at you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I shared milestones and I still do that. And there's one thing my boss taught me. She said to always keep track of milestones. So not just sharing on social media, but having a spreadsheet where I write
Mhm.
down the things that I've accomplished. 2025, got this, did a TEDx talk,
Mhm.
got the Nebula
Mhm.
scholarship, got this, and then add links if there are links to those. Because sometimes we forget what we've done, we forget how much we've accomplished,
Mhm.
and it's not even a matter of saying in 5 years that I got this at this age. You know, it's about saying I came, I saw, I conquered, regardless of the challenges that were in front of me. So keeping track of miles is really something that I've enjoyed doing. And some days, even when a new year is starting, for example, before penning down goals for that year or putting together a vision board, I'm looking at how successful or how
Mhm.
less of a success the previous year was. And then
Mhm.
it helps me to just buckle up for the next year.
I love it. Yeah, I call it my wins list.
Oh.
But yeah, I love that. For my listener who is just really inspired by what you've been talking about and maybe is thinking about whether they could shift into space work or how they could learn a little more about it. Maybe they're early in their career or they are mentoring younger people. Maybe as a mom, they have children or whatever their circumstance might be. What can you share with them about working in your field and inviting them into space work?
Space is awesome, right? Space is awesome, not just because we see the beautiful pictures when
Mhm.
astronauts go to space or because it sounds fancy, but space is awesome because the people in the space industry are lovely people. And there are people who feel very strongly about the work that they do. I don't think I've come across any one person in the industry who is just doing it for money. They always have this story. When I was growing up, for example, this could be a story, by the way, not mine. When I was growing up, my dad took me to a rocket launch, and ever since then, I wanted to work in space. Or my grandma worked on the Apollo mission. Or there's always something
Mhm.
exciting for them, and that's the reason why they're doing the work that they're doing in space. So the people in the industry are so cool, and if we can all have a connection to space, right? Because even if you used to dance in the moonlight or you enjoyed watching the moon come up or the sun come up and the sunset was always beautiful, for example, that is how you link to space, right? If
Yeah.
you do not necessarily have one of the cool, legendary stories, like you had a parent or a grandparent who worked on the Apollo mission. Space is a very interesting industry. The space industry is very cool. The people are lovely. And one thing that I know for sure is if it's something that's of interest to you, you could reach out to anyone the way I did and ask for guidance. And I'm certain that out of 10 people, at least one is going to give you support. There are several fields in space. Like I mentioned, you could be an accountant, you could reach out to a space startup and ask them how you can help. Or if you're a school teacher, you can incorporate space activities into the work that you do, teaching your kids about space or so kids in your school or your own kids. There is, of course, the engineering part, like we know. I know these days, I've had questions from software engineers, for example, asking me
Mhm.
what they can do in the space industry from a
Mhm.
software background. So the industry needs people with skills in Python
Mhm.
and people with data science skills because there's just so much that I could explain. So
Mhm.
there's a lot that can be done. Lawyers, doctors, nurses, people who are passionate about AI.
Mhm.
There's yes, the possibilities are endless, really.
Yeah.
And I say this without trying to exaggerate. There's so much that you can do in space. So I would say look into it, do a little bit of research, read the different things, see the one that you like. It could be you like it because you already have skills that could translate to that field, or you always got fascinated by this particular thing. And then you check on LinkedIn for people who are working in that specific field in the space industry. Tell them about yourself the way I did. This is like my cheat sheet.
Yeah.
So tell them about yourself as I did, and I am certain that you get an answer
Yeah.
or help.
Yeah, that is so great, especially hearing it from you as you've gone through it yourself. I really do consider it a cheat sheet. So, guys, I hope you are taking notes on this, and you never know. One day you might be doing something that led to something that's out there in space or the civilization that we set up on Mars, or you might find yourself also, like Lily, on the stage for a TEDx talk. So I love that you have pointed out that there are endless entry points into this very welcoming field of work and for sharing your personal journey and all of the work that you do now, both when you're in it as well as inspiring and mentoring other people. So, Lily, we want to stay in touch with you. How can we follow your work and find you and reach out to you when people have questions?
I am on LinkedIn as Lily Asongfac and on X, formerly Twitter, but I don't use that a lot. But I think the best place to have updates or reach out to me would be LinkedIn or via emails. My email address is asongfaclily@gmail.com. Yeah, so you could reach out through LinkedIn or via emails, and I will be happy to talk to you.
That is so perfect. Thank you so much. Everyone, go check out her LinkedIn page, and she is so friendly. I'm sure Lily would love it if you sent her a DM or something. And I confirmed with her that this is the best way to track her work too. So thank you so much, Lily, for being on. And it was just such a unique conversation. And I hope we can stay in touch too for some sort of future collaboration or partnership. Maybe not necessarily space related. I'm not sure that's the direction my work is going, but just in general, you're a real inspiration to people. So thank you for showing up today.
Thank you so much, Anoki, for having me. It's an honor for me to share my work, and I can only hope that it inspires someone. So I do appreciate it.
Yes, we are changing lives already with this episode. All right, I will talk to you later. So I hope Lily's story lit something up inside of you, and I don't want you to let that feeling fade. Maybe your next move isn't this massive pivot. Maybe it is just one email or one course, one conversation, or one milestone that you finally write down. If you want support thinking that way every week, then come join the Better Baseline, my weekly newsletter for moms in STEM who are done making career decisions out of guilt and pressure or survival mode. You can join for free at solveformom.com/insider or just click on the link in the show notes. I would love to meet you in your inbox. I hope today's episode will help you make your next right move as a scientist and a mom. And if you enjoyed it, would you share it with a friend or post it on your social media? Your voice truly helps other women in STEM find these conversations when they feel stuck. I also want to make this show an even greater experience for you. So it would be amazing to hear what you think when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to add this show to your playlist right now. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. And I'll see you soon for another episode of Science Careers for Moms.